AITA for refusing intimacy after my wife rejected me, saying she had too much self-respect. My name is Dan, 36 years old. For the first 6.5 years, Grace and I had a solid marriage. We met at a logistics conference in Dallas, bonding over terrible hotel coffee and even worse keynote speakers. She was working in event planning back then, running her own small business. We got married after 18 months of dating and bought a house in the Chicago suburbs. We were living the whole American dream scenario. Everything was good. We traveled, taking weekend trips to Nashville and Austin, and even a longer vacation to Colorado. She had her friends, I had mine, and we did couple stuff on the weekends. We'd go to dinner at that Italian place she loved, or just watch movies on the couch. It was a normal couple's life, nothing to write a country song about, but definitely not something that would justify calling a lawyer either. Then, about 5 months ago, something changed. At first, it was subtle. Little remarks about how I wasn't making enough effort for date nights. An eye roll when I suggested cooking dinner instead of ordering takeout. She started correcting me in front of our friends as if I were a child. His name is Carter, not Carl, she'd say. Or, we went to Mexico, Dan, not Miami. You're getting it confused with your old job. Her friend Monica started hanging around the house more often. Monica is a real estate agent who drives a white Audi and treats every conversation like a high-stakes negotiation. Divorced twice, she collects alimony checks like they're trading cards and has a deeply cynical opinion on everyone else's relationship. Suddenly, Grace started echoing Monica's talking points, saying I didn't appreciate her enough, that marriage should be a partnership with equal effort, and that she deserved better treatment. Better treatment? I work 60 hours a week managing logistics for a national trucking company. I pay the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house. I paid off her student loans last year. Her car is in my name because her credit is a disaster from a compulsive spending phase she went through before we met. I'm not some absent husband who comes home at midnight smelling like a bar. I'm just a normal guy trying to keep everything afloat. But I didn't say any of that. I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe she was stressed about turning 31. Maybe Monica was getting into her head. I stayed calm. I continued doing what I always did, telling myself it would pass. It didn't pass. 3 months ago, she quit her job in event planning, claiming her boss was micromanaging her. Before that, it was a coordinator position at a nonprofit that she left because the hours were too demanding. Before that, it was something else with another excuse. She has been unemployed since January, spending her days at yoga classes and having long lunches with her friends while I managed shipments from Cleveland to Atlanta, wondering when she was going to start contributing again. I didn't pester her about it. I just kept paying the bills and kept my mouth shut, thinking she would eventually find her footing again. 2 months ago, the bedroom became an Arctic tundra. She would pull away whenever I touched her at night. She'd say she was tired, that she had a headache, that she just wanted to sleep. Okay, I thought, not every night needs to be romantic. But soon it became every single night. Then she started flinching if my hand brushed her shoulder. Then she started clinging to the far edge of the king-sized bed as if I were carrying a contagious disease. Last night was the breaking point. I was lying in bed, reading an article on my phone. Grace was next to me, going through her elaborate nightly skincare routine. She slid under the sheets, turned on her side, and presented me with her back. I put my phone down and leaned in to give her a goodnight kiss. My hand grazed her shoulder. She stiffened as if she'd been hit with a taser. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "I have too much self-respect." I froze, my hand hovering in the air. "What did you just say?" "I have self-respect," she repeated. "I'm not just available whenever you feel like it." "Grace," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I was just going to kiss you goodnight." She finally turned to face me, her expression completely closed off, as if she had been waiting for this moment to make a solemn declaration. "I don't care what you intended to do. My body, my choice. And I choose not to be touched by someone who doesn't appreciate me." "Someone who doesn't appreciate you," I repeated, feeling my own voice harden. "What, exactly, do I not appreciate?" She sat up, adopting that condescending attitude she'd been carrying around for weeks. "That's the entire problem, Dan. You think money is love. You don't see me. You don't value me as a person." I laughed. It just came out. The situation was so absurd. "I don't value you? You haven't worked in 5 months, Grace." You spend your days going to brunch with Monica, talking about how hard marriage is, while I spend 2 hours a day in traffic managing actual problems. Her face flushed a deep red. Get out. What? Get out of this bed. Sleep somewhere else. I don't want you near me. I stared at her for a long moment, searching for any sign that this was a joke, a bizarre test, anything other than my wife of 7 years kicking me out of my own bed. Fine, I said, grabbing my pillow. Good luck paying the bills with your self-respect. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and went to the guest room. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house creak, and something inside me just snapped. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't stress. She was rewriting the rules of our marriage and just expecting me to accept them. No way. I pulled out my phone and texted my friend Carter. You free tomorrow night? I need a beer and a serious talk. He replied 30 seconds later. Yeah man, everything okay? I texted back, define okay. 20 minutes later, I was still wide awake when I heard Grace get up to use the bathroom. The water ran. She went through her routine as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just detonated 7 years of marriage over a goodnight kiss. I didn't go back to our bedroom. I didn't apologize. I didn't try to fix anything. I just lay there, thinking about my next move. For 5 months, I had been playing defense, blocking her passive-aggressive attacks, taking hits, and trying to limit the damage. That was over. It was time to switch to offense, and I've always been pretty good at that. Morning came, and I was up at 6 a.m. out of habit. The house was silent. Grace was either still sleeping or pretending to be. I showered in the guest bathroom, got dressed, and went downstairs to make coffee. Our neighbor, Barb, was already in her garden when I went out to get the newspaper. Barb is a woman in her 60s who has lived on our street since the dawn of time. She knows everything about everyone. Morning, Dan. You're up early. Is everything all right between you and Grace? Everything's just fine, Barb. She gave me a suspicious look. Well, if you need anything, I'm right here. I nodded and went back inside. Barb is harmless, but when this whole thing blows up, and it will blow up, she'll be at the center of the neighborhood intelligence network. Mental note, when the divorce proceedings start, Barb will probably organize a committee meeting about it, complete with casseroles. The suburban gossip chain would make the CIA look like amateurs. Inside, Grace was awake. She was in the kitchen, dressed in yoga leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, her phone in her hand. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Good morning, I said, just to see what would happen. She didn't answer, just kept scrolling through her phone. I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. So, we were at the silent treatment stage now. I have nothing to say to you, she finally said without looking up. Cool, I said. Then don't expect me to be home tonight. I've got plans. Her eyes flicked halfway up from her screen. What plans? Poker night at Carter's, I said in a detached tone. Been going for 6 years now. Same guys, same game, twice a month like clockwork. On a Thursday, she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Yes, Grace, on a Thursday. Carter sent a message last night. He moved the game because Owen is at a conference this weekend. It's amazing how she can go from total silence to a sudden, intense interest in my schedule the moment I mention doing something without her. It's a classic control tactic disguised as concern. She put down her phone and crossed her arms. You can't just make plans without telling me. I just did, I said, rinsing my mug in the sink. And technically, I am telling you right now. That's not how a marriage works, Dan. I turned to her and looked her straight in the eye. You told me to get out of our bed last night because I tried to kiss you. You said you didn't want me to touch you. So, I'm giving you space. You should be grateful. She opened her mouth, ready with a retort. But I was already walking out the door. At work, I was running on 4 hours of sleep and pure resentment. 3 of my deliveries were stuck in traffic in Ohio. A client was screaming at me over a delay, and my assistant manager called in sick again. I spent 4 hours on the phone solving other people's problems, then another 2 hours in a planning meeting that could have easily been an email. Around noon, Carter texted me. Still on for tonight, or was that an SOS call? I replied, both. He sent back a laughing emoji and added, bring cash. I'm feeling lucky tonight. At 6 p.m., I was at Carter's place. He has a condo downtown, the ultimate bachelor pad with leather furniture, a gigantic TV, and a dedicated poker table. Owen was already there, quiet as usual, methodically stacking his chips. He works in IT security and never talks about his job. He has this deadpan, monotone voice that makes everything he says unexpectedly funny. And then there was Brendan, a sales guy who is currently on his second marriage and still paying alimony to his first wife. Dan, Carter said as I walked in, probably looking like a wreck. What happened? Grace, I said, offering no further explanation. Say no more, Brendan said, dealing the first hand. Women are complicated. That's why I got married twice. Owen didn't look up from his chips. And how's that working out for you? I'm broke, but I'm happy, Brendan replied. Living the high life. That's not what you were saying last week when you were complaining about your bank account, Owen said flatly. I wasn't complaining. Carter laughed. Are we playing poker or scheduling a group therapy session? We were starting the first hand when there was a knock at the door. Carter went to open it, and I immediately heard her voice. Grace. She walked in like she owned the place, with Monica trailing right behind her. I hope you don't mind, Grace said with a voice dripping with fake sweetness. We were in the neighborhood. Carter looked at me. I gave a slight shake of my head. He's too polite to kick them out, even though this was clearly an ambush organized by Grace. Sure, he said. Grab a seat. She settled onto the sofa right behind the poker table. Monica immediately started asking Carter questions about his condo, how much he paid for it, whether he owned or rented. We were halfway through a hand when Grace launched her first attack. Dan, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You'll probably lose all your money tonight. A silence fell over the table. Brendan glanced at me. Owen just stared at his cards. Carter dealt the next card a little slower than necessary. I looked at her, my face calm. If I lose, it's my money. You're not exactly bringing in an income right now. Her smile faltered for a second. Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke. Yeah, I said, tossing a chip into the pot. Hilarious. Monica let out a forced laugh. Grace is just trying to keep you humble, Dan. All men need that. I ignored her and focused on my cards. But Grace wasn't finished. 20 minutes later, she started again. We were in the middle of a big hand, with almost $300 in the pot, when she leaned forward. Dan, maybe you should fold. Strategy clearly isn't your strong suit. Owen looked up from his cards. Actually, his win rate is higher than everyone else's here, except for Carter's. Grace blinked. What? We keep statistics, Owen said in a perfectly neutral tone. Dan is up $4,000 over the last 2 years. Brendan pointed at Owen with his beer. Did you have to say that right now? You're making the rest of us look like losers. Owen just shrugged. It's just data. Money isn't everything, Monica said, trying to save face for Grace. In poker, it is, Owen replied without even looking up. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see what I would do. Carter had this little smirk on his face, clearly enjoying the show. I folded my hand anyway. Then I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I'm out of here. Grace's eyes went wide. What? You're leaving? Yep, I said, looking at Carter. Sorry, man. Catch you later. Carter gave me a respectful nod. But why? Grace asked, and I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. I looked at her, then at the table, then back at her. Because I don't play where I'm not respected. I walked out. The door closed behind me. A clean exit. Done. My phone started blowing up before I even reached the elevator. Grace was calling. I declined. Monica was sending texts. I deleted them without reading. By the time I got to my car, I had 4 missed calls. I texted Carter, sorry for the scene. He replied immediately, don't apologize. That was the most interesting hand we've played all year. I drove home the long way. Grace had come to humiliate me in front of my friends. When that didn't work, when I just left, she panicked. She wanted control. She wanted me to chase her, to beg her, to prove myself to her. Not happening. I didn't sign up for that game. I got home around 10 p.m. Grace's car was already in the driveway. I walked in to find her in the living room, arms crossed, ready for round 2. Seriously, Dan, she started. You humiliated me like that. I humiliated you, I said, walking towards the stairs. You came uninvited to my poker night just to attack me. That's your problem, not mine. I was trying to spend time with you, she said, her voice rising. No, I said, stopping on the 3rd step. You were trying to prove something to Monica, and maybe to yourself. I'm sleeping in the guest room again. You need to think about what you really want from this marriage, because I'm done trying to guess. You can't just, she started to say. But I was already upstairs. Door closed. Conversation over. Lying there, I started thinking about the next steps. This wasn't fixable. The foundation was broken. Tomorrow, I was going to call a lawyer. The next morning, Grace was gone before I woke up. No note, no message, just an empty house. That suited me just fine. I made myself breakfast and actually enjoyed the silence. I left for work without any drama. Around noon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a Milwaukee area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Dan, said a dry, judgmental woman's voice. It's Caroline. Caroline, my mother-in-law, a woman who had never liked me and had been subtly undermining our marriage at every family dinner for 7 years. Hello, Caroline, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Grace called me this morning. She's very upset. She said you've been emotionally distant, that you're sleeping in another room. I was at a poker night, Caroline. My poker night. She showed up uninvited. She says you were hostile with everyone. Grace deserves better than that. Caroline, if she deserves better, then tell her to go find it somewhere else. I am done with your lectures. How dare you? I hung up. That evening, I was sitting on my front porch with a soda when Barb materialized out of nowhere. I saw Grace leaving with suitcases this morning, she said, getting straight to the point. Is everything okay? She went to her mother's, I said. She's taking some space. Barb sat down on my porch steps, uninvited. This whole thing is a question of who's more stubborn. If you want this to work, you have to hold out longer than she does. I'm not trying to hold out against anyone, I said. I'm just tired of being the bad guy in my own house. She stood up. Then stop defending yourself and start attacking. She walked away before I could ask her what she meant. Grace returned 2 days later, with her mother in tow. Caroline walked into the house like she owned it and immediately started rearranging the decorative pillows on the sofa. Dan, she said, barely looking at me. We need to talk. No, I said. This is between Grace and me, not you. I'm her mother. I have a right to be involved. You are a guest in my home, Caroline. Act like one, or you can leave. Her face turned a shade of purple. Grace jumped in. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. He's hostile with everyone. Your mother walked into my house and started criticizing me in less than 30 seconds. Because someone had to, Caroline snapped. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'm going up to the cabin in Wisconsin for the weekend. You two can have the house. You can't just leave like that, Grace said. Watch me. Wisconsin is a 3-hour drive. I made it in 2.5. The cabin was exactly how I'd left it last month. Small, rustic, and quiet. I spent the weekend fishing, reading, and not thinking about Grace, Caroline, or any of it. When I got back on Sunday night, Grace had calmed down. Caroline was gone. We coexisted in the house for another week without really speaking. Then, on Wednesday morning, she cornered me in the kitchen before I left for work. What is this? I asked. Couples therapy, she said. I found someone. Our appointment is on Friday. I'm not going. Dan, we need help. No, Grace. You need to decide what you want from this marriage. I, on the other hand, am done being your emotional punching bag while you find yourself the. I'm trying to fix things, she said, her voice rising. By setting up appointments without my consent? By bringing your mother here to attack me? That's not fixing anything. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Carter. Monica is hosting a barbecue on Saturday. You and Grace are invited. I can find you an excuse if you need one. I replied, I'll be there. This should be fun. Saturday arrived. We drove to Monica's party in separate cars. I got there first and stood with Carter and Owen near the grill. Monica's backyard was ridiculous. An in-ground pool with a waterfall feature, a full outdoor kitchen with 3 different kinds of grills, and professional landscaping. Divorce settlements were clearly paying very well. Brendan was there too, telling a story by the cooler about a client who bought 30 hospital beds with cash. Grace arrived 20 minutes later with Caroline, because of course she brought her mother. She went straight over to Monica and 2 other women I didn't recognize. They immediately started laughing in that shrill, unbearable way. This is going to be a disaster, Carter muttered. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of my beer. I probably should have stayed home. Then why did you come? Owen asked. Curiosity. I want to see how far this can go. Brendan walked over with a plate full of burgers. Your wife has been shooting daggers at you from across the yard. We were there for about an hour. The food was on the grill, and people were chatting. Then Monica yelled across the yard. Dan, can you help Grace bring out the dishes from the kitchen? It wasn't a request, it was a command, delivered loud enough for everyone to hear. It was a test to see if I would jump when she snapped her fingers. Half the yard turned to look at me. I looked at her, then at Grace. Then I turned back to my conversation. No thanks, I'm good right here. A dead silence fell over the party. Monica's face cycled through 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, anger, embarrassment, and then back to anger. Excuse me, she said. You have 2 arms and 2 legs, I said in a perfectly calm tone. I'm sure you can manage to carry some plates by yourselves. Grace, her face tense, intervened. Dan, don't be rude. No, I said, not moving an inch. I just refuse to take orders at a party. If you need help, you can ask like an adult. Don't announce it to the whole yard like I'm a member of the catering staff. Caroline stepped forward then, materializing out of nowhere and pointing her finger at me like I was a disobedient child. You will not speak to these women that way. I stood up and handed my drink to Carter. Actually, Caroline, I'll speak however I want. This isn't your house. You're not my mother. And I'm done pretending you have any authority over me. The entire yard was completely silent. Even the kids had stopped running around. A guy holding barbecue tongs stood frozen, his arm in the air. Grace's face was beet red. You are embarrassing me. No, I said, walking towards my car. You're embarrassing yourself. I just refuse to participate anymore. Have a good party. I left. 2 parties, 2 dramatic exits. I was creating a signature move. My phone exploded before I even got out of the driveway. Grace was calling. Monica was texting. I ignored it all. 3 public confrontations in 2 weeks, 3 exits. At least I was consistent. I went to a sports bar, ate dinner by myself, and watched a game on TV. My phone kept vibrating in my pocket. Finally, I just turned it off and enjoyed the silence. When I got home around 9 p.m., the house was empty. There was a note on the kitchen counter. I'm sleeping at Monica's tonight. We need some space. I crumpled up the note and tossed it in the trash. Space. Sure, whatever helped her sleep at night. On Monday morning, I called Jeanette. Carter had given me her number months ago, just in case. She was a lawyer specializing in divorce. I need to schedule a consultation, I told her assistant. She had an opening on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Wednesday came, and I was sitting in her office downtown. It was on the 17th floor, with a big window overlooking Lake Michigan. The shelves were filled with law books and framed diplomas. Jeanette was in her late 40s, with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had a look that said nothing got past her. So, she said, tell me what's going on. I told her everything. The rejection in the bedroom, the ambush at poker night, the mother-in-law invasion, the disaster at the barbecue. Jeanette took notes and asked pointed questions. Does she work? No. Who pays the bills? I do. Whose name is on the house deed? Both of ours. But I made the entire down payment and have paid every mortgage payment. The cars. My truck is in my name. Her car is in my name, too, because of her bad credit. Any kids? No. Good, Jeanette said. That simplifies things considerably. We went over the assets. The house was worth about $400,000, with the loan down to $260,000. We talked about the retirement accounts I funded, the savings I had before we were married, and the cabin in Wisconsin. It's mine, I said. I bought it 6 years before I even met her. Separate property, Jeanette confirmed. She has no claim to it. What's the timeline for this? I asked. Filing, service, then negotiation. In Illinois, it's a minimum of 6 months. Longer if she decides to fight it. She'll fight, I said. Jeanette smiled. They all talk a big game until they see the legal bills. Then they tend to become much more reasonable. I left her office with a clear plan. File the papers, have her served, and move out. A clean break. That same evening, I started looking for an apartment. I found a 1-bedroom on the 12th floor of a building downtown, with parking included. I signed the lease that night. My move-in date was in 2 weeks, on a Friday. I didn't say a word to Grace. She would find out soon enough. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly prepared for my departure. I started moving my personal things into a storage unit. I gathered all my important documents. I transferred money into new accounts that were only in my name. Grace was so busy complaining to Monica that she didn't notice a thing. She was barely home anyway. I slept in the guest room every night. We hardly spoke. She'd leave passive-aggressive notes on the counter. I'd leave cash for groceries and go to work. One morning, Barb caught me loading a few boxes into my truck. "You're moving out?" she asked, not even trying to be discreet. "Yep." She nodded. "Good for you. You want my opinion?" "Not really, Barb." She gave it to me anyway. "Don't let her make you out to be the bad guy. Women like that will rewrite history to make themselves the victim. You stick to your truth." "Thanks, Barb," I said. And this time, I really meant it. That Friday, Jeanette filed the divorce papers. I got the confirmation email at 2 p.m. The process server was scheduled to go to the house on Monday morning. I spent the weekend moving the rest of my things. Grace was at her mother's place in Milwaukee. She had no idea what was about to happen. Monday morning at 9 a.m., the server showed up at the house. I know because Grace called me 30 seconds later, absolutely furious. "What is this?" she shrieked into the phone. "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "It's over, Grace." There was a moment of silence. "You can't be serious. We can fix this." "I am serious." "And no, we can't." She hung up. I expected the screaming to start right away, but there was nothing for 2 hours. Then, a text. "Can we at least talk about this in person?" I didn't answer. An hour later, "Dan, please. I know I made mistakes." Still nothing. By the evening, her tone had changed. "Are you really going to throw away 7 years just like that? Then, fine. If this is what you really want." But the next morning, that's when things really fell apart. She called me at 7 a.m. This time, she was crying. Were the tears real or fake? At this point, I couldn't even tell the difference. "Dan, please, we can fix this," she sobbed. "We can go to therapy. I'll change. I'll do whatever you want." "You had 5 months to change," I said. "You chose not to. Now, you have to accept the consequences." The crying stopped instantly. "I will fight you on this," she said, her voice hard as ice. "You are going to regret leaving me. Fight all you want. My lawyer is ready." I hung up. She called back immediately. I declined the call and turned off my phone. That evening, I was in my new apartment, unpacking boxes, when someone started banging violently on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Grace, her face red and blotchy, makeup smeared, her hair a mess. I didn't open the door. "Dan," she screamed through the door. "Open up. We need to talk." "No," I said from the other side. "We have nothing left to say to each other." "Please," she said, crying again. I was lost. Monica was influencing me. I'll cut ties with her. I'll do anything. Interesting how quickly we got to the bargaining stage. It usually takes longer. She must be more desperate than I thought. "Grace, go home," I said. "This is your fault," she suddenly screamed. "You abandoned us. You gave up on our marriage. You're a coward." "I'm done with this conversation," I said. "You have my lawyer's number. Talk to her." "I'll take everything," she shrieked. "The house, the money, your retirement. You'll be left with nothing." "You can certainly try." She continued banging on the door for another 5 minutes, shouting threats, then crying, then begging, then back to threatening again. Finally, building security arrived and escorted her out. They called me a few minutes later. "Sir, is everything okay? Do you need to file a report?" "No, it was just a family situation. It's been handled." The following week, she tried everything. On day 1, she tried the apology tour. Long text messages about how much she had reflected, about how she understood her mistakes, about her desire to rebuild our trust. I didn't reply. On day 2, she tried bargaining. She showed up at my office building with coffee, asking for just 5 minutes of my time. Security escorted her out. She waited in the parking lot for an hour before finally giving up. On day 3, she sent Monica. She cornered me in a coffee shop near my office and launched into a speech about how Grace was just lost and confused. I got up and walked out in the middle of her sentence. On day 4, the anger returned. The messages shifted from apologies to accusations. "You abandoned us. You gave up. You're weak. This is all your fault." On day 5, she weaponized our mutual friends. People I barely knew started texting me, telling me I should give her another chance, that marriage requires effort. I blocked all of them. It just kept going. With each passing day, she became more and more unstable. On day 7, Carter texted me. "FYI, Grace is telling people you abandoned her for no reason." "Let her talk," I replied. "The truth always comes out in the end." On Friday afternoon, Jeanette called. "She's making some noise. She wants the house, alimony, and half of your retirement accounts." "I hope she's prepared to be disappointed," I said. "What's our strategy?" Jeanette asked. We offer her exactly what she's legally entitled to. Not a penny more. Illinois is an equitable distribution state. She'll get half the marital assets, which is the equity in the house and the retirement contributions made during the marriage. No alimony. She's perfectly capable of working. She can either accept that, or we can go to court and she can spend her half on legal fees. Sounds good to me, Jeanette said. By the third week, Grace was getting desperate. She started posting vague messages on social media about betrayal and broken trust, clearly aimed at me. Monica shared every single one of them, adding comments about how men are trash. I didn't reply. I didn't engage. I just let her scream into the void. Then came the fourth week. I was up at the cabin for the weekend. I had invited Carter and Owen up to do some fishing and have a barbecue. Brendan was supposed to come, but he canceled at the last minute. Another crisis with his second wife, a classic Brendan situation. On Saturday afternoon, we were out on the dock, completely relaxed. Owen had already caught 2 bass and wouldn't stop talking about it. Carter hadn't caught anything, but insisted his technique was superior. Me, I was just enjoying the peace and quiet. This is the life, Owen said, reeling in his third fish of the day. Then we heard a car coming down the long gravel driveway. We all looked at each other. No one else was supposed to be here. The cabin is 40 minutes from the nearest town, at the end of a dirt road that doesn't even show up on GPS. A car door slammed. We heard the sound of high heels on gravel. That was a bad sign. Then we heard her voice. Grace came around the side of the cabin, and she was a mess. She was wearing an evening dress and stilettos, as if she had just come from a fancy restaurant. She stumbled on the uneven ground, looking completely lost. Dan, she shouted when she saw me on the dock. We need to talk. Now. Owen looked at me and raised an eyebrow. We can leave. I shook my head. No, stay. This is going to be entertaining. Grace staggered forward, nearly tripping twice. Carter muttered something about his liability insurance, and I had to hold back a laugh. You can't just ignore me, she said as she approached, pointing a finger at me. I am your wife. You are my future ex-wife, I said, not moving from my chair. And you are trespassing on my property. She stopped at the edge of the dock, wobbling on her heels. I came all this way to force you to listen to me. I'm not interested, I said. Go home, Grace. You ruined my life, she said, her voice getting louder. You abandoned me. You're a coward. No, I just stopped playing a rigged game where you changed the rules every time I was about to win. Carter snorted into his drink. Owen bit his lip to keep from laughing. Who are they? Grace demanded, staring at them. Are these your new friends? Have you already replaced me? These are the same friends I've had for 6 years, I said. You were just too self-absorbed to remember their names. Hey, Owen said in his perfectly neutral tone. I spent 3 hours writing that wedding toast. Carter burst out laughing. I'm self-absorbed, she screamed. I gave you 7 years of my life. And I paid for those 7 years, I shot back. What did you give me, besides a bad attitude and a list of ultimatums? I loved you, she said, as if it were some grand revelation. You loved the lifestyle, I corrected her. You loved what I provided for you. That's not true, she said, her voice breaking. Grace, I said, finally standing up. You kicked me out of our bed because I tried to kiss you goodnight. You humiliated me in front of my friends. You brought your mother to my house to attack me. You showed up at parties just to give me orders like I was your employee. You made it very clear that I wasn't good enough for you. So, I left. That is your responsibility. But I regret it, she said, sobbing now, her mascara running down her face. I was lost. Monica told me I deserved better, and I believed her. Monica has been divorced twice and is miserable, I said. Maybe you should avoid taking marital advice from someone who can't stay married. Carter raised his glass in a silent toast to that. You're being cruel, Grace said. I'm being honest. You wanted better, so go find it. But you don't have the right to show up drunk at my cabin and throw a tantrum because I refuse to keep playing your game. I came here to fight for us, she said. No. You came here because you're starting to realize that no one else is going to put up with your behavior. She just stared at me, tears streaming down her face, her makeup completely ruined. Owen stood up, his phone in his hand. Ma'am, you should probably get an Uber back. You don't seem to be in a condition to drive. Mind your own business, she shrieked at him. Then she turned back to me. Is this what you want? To humiliate me in front of strangers? You humiliated yourself, I said. And for the record, I'm starting to dislike you quite a bit. I hate you, she sobbed. I shrugged. Welcome to the club. Your mother is the president. She let out a strange sound, half scream and half sob, and then tried to make a dramatic exit. It would have been more convincing if she hadn't been intoxicated, wearing 4-inch heels, and standing on a wooden dock. She took about 5 steps before her heel got stuck in the space between 2 planks. For a second, she flailed, her arms windmilling like she was trying to take flight. Then, gravity won. She crashed face-first onto the dock. A dull thud echoed across the lake. Her dress rode up, one of her shoes flew off and landed in the water with a splash, and she just lay there, sprawled out and moaning against the wood. Owen had his phone out and recording before she even hit the ground. Carter was literally shaking with laughter, his face turning red as he tried to hold it in. Grace slowly pushed herself up. She had splinters stuck to her forehead, and a red mark was already forming on her cheek. Her hair was hanging in her face in clumps. She looked like she had lost a fight with a ceiling fan. You monsters, she gasped. Were you taking pictures? Video, actually, Owen said calmly. Delete that right now, she screamed at him, still on her hands and knees. Owen looked down at his phone, swiping the screen. No, I don't think I will. This is quality content. Carter completely lost it. He was bent over, laughing and gasping for air. Grace struggled to her feet, one shoe on, the other at the bottom of the lake. The mark on her face was already starting to bruise. She had splinters in her palms and was trying to pull them out while maintaining what little dignity she thought she had left. You are all horrible people, she said, her voice trembling. I hate every single one of you. She tried to storm off, realized she only had one shoe, took it off, and threw it at me. It missed by a good 3 feet and landed in the lake next to the other one. Well, now you're polluting, Owen observed. We're going to have to call the EPA. Carter was now sitting on the edge of the dock, completely overcome with laughter. Grace limped barefoot towards her car, the hem of her dress torn, utterly defeated. Carter pulled out his phone. I'm calling her an Uber. There's no way she's driving. Good idea, I said. And send me that video. Already done, Owen replied. It's the best thing I've filmed since my nephew's birthday party, when the clown got attacked by a swarm of wasps. 10 minutes later, an Uber arrived. The driver saw Grace's battered face and torn dress and just stood there, his mouth hanging open. Carter went over and talked to him, probably gave him a huge tip, and explained that she was just upset, not the victim of a crime. Grace got into the Uber, still crying. Her car was still in my driveway. Both of her shoes were still in my lake. Carter came back to the dock. Well, that was theatrical. Just wait until her lawyer sees our settlement offer. Agreed, I said. Owen was still smiling, looking at his phone. I am definitely going to make a gif out of this. We fished for another hour. The silence was only broken by the sound of the water lapping against the dock, the call of a few birds, and Owen chuckling to himself as he rewatched the video. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Grace got exactly what she was entitled to under Illinois law. Half the net value of the house after it was sold, half of the retirement contributions accumulated during the marriage, and her car. That was it. No alimony. The judge determined that she was perfectly capable of working. She tried to argue emotional distress and abandonment, but the judge quickly dismissed both claims. The entire process cost me $8,000 in legal fees. Every single cent was worth it. After the house was sold, she moved in permanently with Monica. According to the Suburban Gossip Network, embodied by Barb, she got a part-time job as a bank teller and probably hates every minute of it. Caroline called me one time after the divorce was final to tell me that I had destroyed her daughter's life and that I was a selfish, heartless person. I told her that she should have taught her daughter not to bite the hand that feeds her. She hung up and has never called back. Carter and Owen come over to my new place most weekends. We do classic bachelor stuff. Watch sports, play cards, order pizza. Last week, Brendan came over and spent 2 hours complaining about his alimony payments. We made him pay for the pizzas as punishment. I'm not dating anyone yet. I have no desire to. For the first time in 7 years, I'm just living life on my own terms. And life is peaceful. Very peaceful. Comment. I think this story really drives home the importance of personal boundaries. It shows how crucial it is to define how we deserve to be treated. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is for yourself. Walking away from a situation that no longer serves you is not failure. It is an act of profound self-care and responsibility. You do not always have to win the argument to find peace. True healing begins when you choose your well-being over the chaos of conflict. I hope you remember that your inner peace is your greatest asset. Protect it with kindness, courage, and clear boundaries. Take good care of yourselves out there. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.